Today we're going to talk about
Fungus.
fungus is a decomposer. It comes in many different forms, ranging from familiar mushrooms, some of which are edible, to yeast, useful in preparing certain foods, and mold, which is useful in, well, spoiling food, but it's also useful in preparing certain life-saving drugs. These powerlifter decomposers are humble but vastly important for Earth's ecosystems, and they're also useful for a lot of human projects. Before we go any further, let's identify our goal. After watching this video, you should be able to explain how decomposers serve important functions for both humans and Earth's ecosystems. To start with, let's look at something one of my students did. I had a student who gave me this. He said that he had filled a soft drink bottle with apple slices at lunch, and then placed the bottle in his locker and forgot about it.
Bad idea.
See how the bottle is rock hard? It's filled with gas, and the student is lucky it didn't explode in his locker. At this point, take a moment to pause the video and try to come up with some ideas about what happened in the bottle. Why did the bottle fill with gas? And what could the gas be? The bottle filled up with gas because of yeast, a type of fungus. When you think fungus, you probably imagine a mushroom, but fungi are more diverse than just that. We'll get more into this diversity shortly. But what's so interesting here is all this gas. Let's explore what the yeast did to produce this gas, what the gas is, and how this can be useful to humans. If you or your parents have ever baked bread, you've used yeast. Yeast is the ingredient in bread dough that makes it rise. When baked, the bread is airy and light, with these little bubbles all through it. If you forget to add yeast, you end up with a dense, heavy bread. So we know that yeast produces the gas that makes bread dough rise. But what is the gas? To investigate this, let's get some yeast active in the presence of bromothymol blue, which we'll call BTB. We'll dissolve some yeast in water, and then add some sugar for them to eat. Recall that BTB shows us if an organism is producing or absorbing carbon dioxide gas, also known as CO2. The BTB will turn more blue if CO2 is removed from it. It will turn more yellow if CO2 is added to it. Let's leave this yeast alone for a few hours and see what happens. Look, the BTB turned from greenish to yellowish. That means that CO2 entered the BTB, and it must have come from the yeast. So now we know that yeast eats sugar and produces CO2, just like an animal does. That's why my student's bottle filled with gas when he put apple slices in it. Yeast was present in the bottle and ate the sugars in the apples, producing carbon dioxide. We can demonstrate how this chemical reaction works using our molecular modeling kit. Here we start with a sugar molecule. The yeast eats the sugar and rearranges the atoms into different products. This reaction that we saw the yeast perform is called fermentation. It's related to respiration, only fermentation also produces ethanol as a waste product, which is useful as a solvent, a disinfectant, and the active ingredient in adult beverages. Remember that yeast is a fungus, and so are mushrooms and mold. They all perform cellular respiration and often fermentation, like we saw in the yeast. And all fungi can perform their chemical reactions in total darkness, which means they do not perform photosynthesis like plants do. And fungi are enormously beneficial for humans. They are useful for us because without yeast, we wouldn't have fluffy light bread. Without mushrooms, we'd be missing an essential pizza topping. And without mold, we never would have discovered penicillin, one of the first antibiotics, which was in fact isolated from mold. But fungi are also essential actors in Earth's ecosystems. The primary ecological niche of fungi is as decomposers. That means that when an organism dies, such as an animal, a plant, or another fungus, decomposers do the job of breaking that organism's tissues down into nutrients that the fungus uses. This causes those nutrients to be once again available to the broader ecosystem. Without fungi and other decomposers, dead organisms would pile up all over the place and be unable to be cycled back into the nutrient cycles upon which Earth's ecosystems depend. Basically, we would be flooded with dead stuff. As essential as fungi are to Earth's ecosystems, they can sometimes be a nuisance to us. They are a common disease of crops and can manifest in such lovely conditions as corn smut, orange rust, and verticillium wilt. Fungi can also impact humans directly with uncomfortable conditions like ringworm, athlete's foot, and thrush, known more commonly as a yeast infection. So, to summarize, decomposers are a hugely diverse group of organisms, of which the most visible ones are fungi, mushrooms, mold, and yeast. Fungi serve many functions to us, including helping to decompose dead organisms, but they can also be problematic. So, love 'em or hate 'em, we can't live without 'em. Let's review the goal of this video to make sure that you met it. After watching this video, you should be able to explain how decomposers serve important functions for both humans and Earth's ecosystems. If you can't do that, go back and watch the parts of the video you didn't understand. Until next time, remember, you can learn anything.